अस्सलाम वालेकुम स्टूडेंट्स, वेलकम टू माय चैनल। आज हम पाक 522 सब्जेक्ट के मिड टर्म प्रिपरेशन के हवाले से इंपॉर्टेंट सब्जेक्टिव्स जो है वो स्टार्ट करने लगे हैं, यानी शॉर्ट क्वेश्चन आंसर इस वीडियो में आपको मिलेंगे लेसन वाइज, और ये पार्ट 1 है इस वीडियो का। ठीक है, इस वीडियो में हम लेक्चर नंबर 1 से लेक्चर नंबर 7 तक जो है वो कवर करेंगे। तो चलिए स्टार्ट करते हैं। डिफाइन आइडियोलॉजी. Ideology is a system of ideas and beliefs that guides how people understand society and their identity. What is Pakistan's ideology? Pakistan's ideology is the belief that Muslims are a separate nation and need their own homeland. What is two-nation theory? It is the idea that Muslims and Hindus are two separate nations with different cultures and different values. What is the role of religion in ideology? Religion provides unity, identity, and foundation for Pakistan's ideological structure. How does culture contribute to ideology? Culture provides shared language, traditions, and symbols that build national identity. What is the importance of history in ideology? History provides past events and heroes that justify the creation of Pakistan. How does ideology help nation building? It unites people, gives direction, and provides framework for state institutions. What did the Mughal Empire Why did the Mughal Empire decline? The Mughal Empire declined due to weak rulers, internal conflicts, and administrative corruption. What was the Jagirdari crisis? It was a shortage of land assignments causing corruption and loss of loyalty. What was the doctrine of lapse? It was British policy to annex states without male heirs. What was the immediate cause of the 1857 war? The cause of greased cartridges offended religious belief of soldiers. Where did the 1857 war start? It started in Meerut with Sepoy rebellion. Who was Bahadur Shah Zafar? He was the last Mughal emperor and symbolic leader of 1857 revolt. What is the British Raj? British Raj was the direct rule of the British Crown over India after 1857. Why were Muslims targeted after 1857? Because the British believed Muslims led the rebellion and tried to restore Mughal rule. What was Muslim educational problem after 1857? Muslims avoided English education, which led to their backwardness. What is the trauma of defeat? It refers to psychological and social shock Muslims faced after losing power. What caused the economic decline of Muslim? Confiscation of property and British industrial policies caused economic decline. What fear did Muslims have after 1857? Muslims feared Christian missionary influence and loss of Islamic identity. What was the main problem of Muslims after 1857? Muslims faced severe educational backwardness due to rejection of modern education. Why did Muslims avoid English education? They feared Christian conversion and loss of Islamic values. What was Scientific Society? It was an organization that translated Western knowledge into Urdu. When was Mao, M-A-U? When was Mao, M-A-O, College established? MAO College was established in 1875 at Aligarh. What was the aim of the Aligarh movement? Its aim was to promote modern education with Islamic values. Why was the Aligarh movement important? It created intellectual and political awakening among Muslims. What was Islamia College, Peshawar? It was a Muslim educational institution established in 1913 in Frontier Province. Who is called Sir Sayyid for frontier? Shh. Who is called Sir Sayyid for frontier? Sahibzada Abdul Qayyum Khan is called Sir Sayyid for frontier. What was the Muhammadan Educational Conference? It was a body to promote Muslim education and awareness. How did the Aligarh movement help the Pakistan movement? It produced educated leaders who later supported the creation of Pakistan. What was the impact of the Aligarh movement on Muslims? It created confidence and modern thinking among Muslims. How did Islamia College help Muslims? It provided modern education while preserving Islamic identity. What is two nation theory? It is the belief that Muslims and Hindus are two separate nations. Who is the father of two nation theory? Sir Syed Ahmad Khan is called the father of two nation theory. What was the Urdu Hindi controversy? There was a conflict over replacing Urdu with Hindi in 1867. Why was Urdu important for Muslim? Urdu represented Muslim cultural and political identity. What was Sir Syed's main contribution? He promoted education and Muslim political awareness. When was Congress formed? Indian National Congress was formed in 1885. Why did Sir Syed oppose Congress? He feared Muslims would be politically dominated. What are separate electorates? System where Muslims elect their own representatives separately. When was Bengal partitioned? Bengal was partitioned in 1905. Why did Muslims support Bengal partition? Because it gave them political and economic benefits. Why did Hindus oppose Bengal partition? They feared loss of political and economic dominance. What was the impact of the 1911 annulment? It increased Hindu-Muslim political tension. What is a separate electorate? It is a system where Muslims elect their own representatives separately. Why did Muslims demand a separate electorate? Because they feared political domination by Hindu majority. What was similar deputation? It was Muslim delegation that demanded political safeguards in 1906. When was Muslim League formed? Muslim League was formed in 1906 at Dhaka. What was the main aim of Muslim League? To protect the political rights of Muslims. What was Minto Morley reform? It was 1909 reform that introduced separate electorates. What was Lucknow Pact? It was 1916 agreement between Congress and Muslim League. What was Montague Chelmsford reform? It was 1919 reform introducing diarchy in provinces. What was the Simon Commission? Why was the Simon Commission rejected? Because no Indian member was included. That's why Simon Commission was rejected. What was the Nehru report? It was 1928 constitutional proposal rejecting Muslim demands. What were Jinnah's 14 points? It was Muslim demands to protect political rights in India. Why is Jinnah called parting of ways? Because it showed clear Hindu-Muslim political separation. Why was Allahabad address? What was Allahabad address 1930? It was the presidential address of Allama Iqbal in which he presented the idea of a separate Muslim state. What is two-nation theory according to Iqbal? It means Muslims and Hindus are two separate nations with different religion, different culture, and different identity. What was Iqbal's main demand in Allahabad address? He demanded a separate homeland for Muslims in northwest India. Which province were included in Iqbal's Muslim state? Punjab, Sindh, NWFP, and Balochistan were suggested for Muslim state. Why did Iqbal reject Indian nationalism? Because India was a diverse land and Muslims had a separate identity. What is Ummah in Iqbal's thought? Ummah means the global Muslim community united by faith. How did Iqbal view Islam? He viewed Islam as a complete code of life, including religion, politics, and society. What was Iqbal's political shift? He shifted from Indian nationalism to Muslim nationalism. Why is Iqbal called the dreamer of Pakistan? Because he first gave the idea of a separate Muslim state. What was Congress' reaction to Allahabad address? Congress opposed Iqbal's idea of a separate Muslim state. What was Muslim League reaction? Muslim League gradually accepted and supported Iqbal's vision. What is the significance of Allahabad address? It provided the intellectual foundation for the Pakistan movement. How did Europe influence Iqbal? European education changed his thinking toward Muslim political identity. What is Iqbal's concept of Muslim nationhood? Muslims are a separate nation based on religion and culture. What is importance of Iqbal's letter to Jinnah? They encouraged Jinnah to lead Muslims for a separate state. What is Pakistan's idea according to Iqbal, a separate Muslim state based on Islamic principles and autonomy? What was Iqbal's view on democracy in India? He believed Western democracy would lead to Hindu majority domination. What does the Allahabad address mark in history? It marks the intellectual foundation of Pakistan ideology. What is provincial autonomy? Provincial autonomy means provinces were given elected governments to run their own affairs. What was diarchy? Diarchy was a system where powers were divided between British officials and Indian ministries. Why was the Government of India Act 1935 important? It introduced provincial autonomy and expanded political participation in British India. What was the main purpose of the 1937 election? The purpose was to implement provincial autonomy under the Act of 1935. Why did Congress win more seats in 1937? Congress had stronger organization and wider mass support in most provinces. That's why they win more seats in 1937. Why did Muslim League perform poorly in 1937? Muslim League had weak organization and limited support among Muslims. What does the Congress ministry period? What was the Congress ministry period? Congress ministries ruled between 1937 and 1939 in several provinces. Why did Congress refuse coalition with Muslim League? Congress refused because it wanted Muslims to join Congress and ended separate identity. What was the impact of 1937 election on Muslims? It created fear of Hindu majority domination among Muslims. What is meant by separate electorates? Separate electorates means Muslims vote for Muslim candidates only. What was the significance of federal court? It was established to interpret constitutional matters under 1935 Act. What was the All India Federation? 1935 Act. It was a proposed union of British provinces and princely states but never implemented. Why did Muslims oppose Congress ministries? Because Muslims felt politically and culturally marginalized. What was Warda scheme? It was an educational plan criticized for ignoring Muslim value. What did the Pirpur report highlight? It highlighted Muslim political and social grievance under Congress rule. How did the 1937 elections strengthen Muslim League? It pushed Muslim League to recognize and become stronger politically. What was the role of governors in the 1935 Act? Governors had special powers to override provincial governments. Why was diarchy abolished in provinces? Because it was ineffective and limited Indian ministers' power. What was the main feature of Congress rule? It was majority rule without power sharing with minorities. What was the long-term impact of government ministries? It strengthened Muslim political unity and demand for a separate state. इसके साथ ही हमारा पार्ट 1 पाक 522 के सब्जेक्टिव्स का शॉर्ट क्वेश्चन आंसर्स का यही मुकम्मल होता है। मुझे उम्मीद है कि ये आपके लिए काफी यूजफुल रहेंगे मिड टर्म प्रिपरेशन के हवाले से। कोई सवाल या कोई फीडबैक अगर आप देना चाहें तो जरूर मुझे कमेंट सेक्शन में बताइएगा। मैं पूरी कोशिश करूंगी आपको टाइमली रिस्पॉन्स देने की। चैनल पर नए हैं तो सब्सक्राइब करना हरगिज़ ना भूलिएगा ताकि मजीद तमाम इंपॉर्टेंट अपडेट जो हैं आप तक टाइमली पहुंचती रहे। मेरे लेक्चर्स को अपने फेलो स्टूडेंट तक फुटचर यूनिवर्सिटी के डिफरेंट ग्रुप्स पे, डिफरेंट फोरम्स पे जरूर शेयर कीजिएगा ताकि मैक्सिमम स्टूडेंट इन वीडियो से फायदा हासिल कर सकें। इंशाल्लाह मैं अपनी नेक्स्ट वीडियो के साथ जल्द हाजिर होंगी। तब तक आप सब अपना बहुत ख्याल रखिएगा। अल्लाह हाफिज।